Hi, I'm Catherine Llewellyn, the host of the podcast. You can find out all about Truth and Transcendence on truthandtranscendence.com. And you can find out all about me on beingspace.world, where you will find my online coaching offering, as well as my UK-based workshops. The Freedom of Spirit workshop for liberation and empowerment, the Pellower Radical Shift in Consciousness workshop for spiritual expansion, and transformational coaching for exploring the mind-body-spirit connection on the expansive path. You can also support the podcast by actually making a donation. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all our episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. So today I'm delighted to welcome special guest Kara Goodwin, who's here today to talk about a number of things, but we're going to be starting by talking about tenacity. And Kara's got a very particular take on this that's quite individual and unique. So I'm excited about that. Kara is the host of the Soul Elevation podcast, where she explores ascension, spiritual awakening, energy healing, ET connections, and consciousness. And she's also author of Your Authentic Awakening. You can find Kara at karagoodwin.com, and that's KaraGoodwin, karagoodwin.com. So Kara, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm really excited to be here. You have such a great podcast, and I'm very delighted to join you today.
Fantastic. Thank you. So tenacity. Let's jump straight in with tenacity. So we were talking about this in the prequel and how it's been really important for you. Obviously, it's very present for you now. Can you remember when it first became present for you? Kind of early connections with tenacity.
Yes. And, I loved how you sort of challenged me as a guest to be like, okay, if we're going to have a theme, what can it be? And I wanted it to be sort of different than some of the ground that you cover a lot in other interviews and so forth. So it's really fascinating to think about a spiritual journey or a personal evolution journey in terms of tenacity. But that has really been something that has kept me on a spiritual exploration path. And my beginning actually started quite abruptly. The first steps of my spiritual path in earnest really started pretty abruptly with a traumatic few months where a lot of different things happened all at once. But I really felt that the rug got pulled out from under me. So just as a quick rundown, my sister-in-law took her life, which was just devastating. She was one of my best friends also, in addition to being a sister. And she was, about like 3 weeks away from getting married. She had 2 little kids, and it was just like devastating. And then our dog died a couple of weeks after that, and my stepdad needed to he had a surgery on his brainstem, which of course is very, very delicate part of the body to be operated on. So he was having all sorts of physical issues that were confusing and concerning. And then with this operation, it was like, that was just stressful. Like, how is he going to come out of this? Because that could go a lot of different ways. Luckily, it went the best possible way, and he's doing very well. But a couple of weeks after that, or a few weeks after that, my mother-in-law was hit by a motorbike as she crossed the street. So again, this is hot on the heels of just losing her daughter. And then she's in the hospital recovering from a lot of trauma with being hit by a motorbike as an elderly person. And then by a couple of months after that, my stepmom ended up in the ICU with a failing heart. She'd been dealing with a heart virus for many years and had been doing really, really well. The doctors they would have presentations about her in conferences because she was controlling things so well with her diet and exercise, and of course some medication as well. But she was kind of the ideal patient. And then she caught a virus that really took her south very, very fast. And she ended up at the top of a heart transplant list and had a heart transplant as soon as one became available. She's doing very well now, too. but that was a lot to go through. And that's just in my husband and my immediate family. We also had like one of our best friends who was a groomsman in our wedding, one of my husband's best friends from kind of teenage years, was diagnosed with a brain tumor. He passed away the next year. So it was just like, what is going on? This is not what life is. Like, is this what life is? Oh my gosh, like, how do I deal with this? How do I cope with it? And that was how I found meditation, because I literally just needed to find my feet. I needed something that could help me to cope with this new life and all of the anxiety that came with that. And so I really wasn't interested in spirituality at that time. I really just wanted something grounded. And even though I learned meditation from monks, I was very kind of holding the whole like spiritual part of it at arm's length. Like, I don't know about that. And I would, start with prayer like they told me to. Here are my teachers are telling me I have to start with prayer, and this is the prayer that I say. But it was all mechanical. And it has been an evolution of accepting that there is a soul part of me, and even more than accepting that there is a soul nature to me and to everybody. I mean, that was something that it didn't, I just didn't know. I mean, it was like always a possibility, and I loved the idea of it, but I wasn't sure practically if there really was a soul, like an eternal part of us. And I was pretty sure probably there was a God, but I felt invisible to God. I felt unworthy. I hadn't really done anything to make myself worthy of God's attention and love. And there's just so much calamity around the world that it was sort of like I saw God as having like finite resources. And like I didn't want to take those resources because I felt privileged and unworthy. Go and spend your healing energy on people who are dedicated to like to praying to you and going to church, and who are really in such a terrible suffering state, and I'll be okay. you know and so it was something that once it that fire through meditation, it sort of just happened organically, where I would perceive light. Like I remember the first time I really perceived behind closed eyes during a meditation, this light descending through my inner sight. And I wept. I mean, it was so moving, and it just, and I didn't know necessarily what it was, but it really felt like something was awakening or communing with me or something. And little things like that helped me to open up to like, maybe I am worthy, and maybe this is something for me. And, but I've also, I've been meditating and seeking for many years, and there have definitely been times where things have gotten dry, have gotten stale, where I have just felt that, or I have felt like I was deceived, not by God, but just by like spiritual teachers that I had given my trust to, and then felt that I was deceived with that. And then that also gives, like, that just makes you kind of question your whole spiritual framework, your foundation, whether anything is real. And so it really has taken this tenacity, this choice. We can think of it just as continuing to choose. If tenacity feels like a very militaristic or too harsh, when we're because truthfully, another part of spiritual development is relaxation and allowing and surrendering. So there's definitely this balance, because I know that I err on the side of, not, I don't want to say forcing it, but of what else can I do? Even if that's in meditation, I am trying to soften more and just allow, like, be more in the allowance, be more in just like, I'm not gonna, I always have a breath work part. I always have a prayer part. I always have like different parts to my meditation, but I'm trying to have even more spaciousness of like, I'm not going to try to dictate and control every aspect of this, because we can even hang on too tightly in meditation. So for me, that's like, I tend to go more that direction than the surrendering. Um, but it has been this choice to continue to explore, to continue, because the thing is with a spiritual path, with a even with a personal development path, you are who you are where you are, and then there's what you think you can be, and whether that is like the embodiment of your spirit, or if it's a goal in the future that you don't have it yet, right? You're not fully that yet, but putting you're putting one foot in front of the other in faith that that is a worthwhile direction to go to. But even if we talk about it in the material sense, it's like we aren't yet who it is that we will become. Even if it's like, oh, I think that I'll finally be happy once I get this promotion, or I finally get that car that I've had my eye on for so long, and that will help me feel complete. There's faith even in that, where there's no spiritual, connection, or no spiritual thought with that, but it's a faith, it's a trust that if I work my way and keep going in that direction, that's going to lead me to what I don't have right now, which is ultimately a feeling of totality, in my opinion. Um, I think that's all what everybody is sort of the impetus, the drive is that, you know, something's missing and this is how I'm going to fill it, with whether we want to think about it in terms of material, spiritual, personal development or whatnot. But um, so it is that the choice to keep going. And we very well may have times where it feels like we have the path has diverged, and maybe we feel that we've taken the quote unquote wrong path, or that we've been led astray, or what it might be. I know for me personally, one thing that comes to mind over the years that I do write about in Your Authentic Awakening is that I joined a spiritual group. And I thought that this group was something special. I thought that the leaders were really something special. It was sold as this quick path, like the quickest path to enlightenment or ascension, or however you want to think about it, whatever the terminology is. And I did feel when I engaged with these teachings, I learned new things, and they seemed very powerful and palpable and advanced. And as I engaged more, and luckily I wasn't a part of it for a super long time, just a few months, um, but it did start to crumble, and people started pulling out, and stories arose where it was like, oh, this is all a ruse. This is all an illusion. They are not who they say they are. They're siphoning funds and energy and really like um, getting people hooked in and then just sucking them dry on the energetic level, on the financial level. So that was, that was something that I had put my trust in. I had put my faith in. I had put some money in, to purchase the courses. I went on one of their retreats, which was astonishingly expensive, in my opinion, but my ascension is worth it, right? So there were all these like ways in hindsight, like once the veil came down, that I felt betrayed, and it can make you question everything that you were taught in that situation, but they were using spiritual teachings, they were using spiritual truths, but they were twisting them and inverting them in order to prop themselves up. But it can't, that type of situation, a lot of people, that's almost like a rite of passage. A lot of people go through that, where they have a spiritual teacher who ends up not being what they had hoped that they were, and they eventually see the truth. Um, and so that's one of those things. Like, what do you do in that situation? Do you throw the baby out with the bathwater? You just say, okay, everything's fake. The only thing that's true is what my five senses can perceive. There's nothing, there's nothing beyond this, because you've been hurt. And so you come from that wounded place, and then you try to protect yourself. And um, it is that we come up against these choice points to say, okay, what I have to clear all that out and find my North Star again, and make the choice that this is still something that I'm very interested in. I still want to keep connecting deeper with my soul, with my higher self, and express myself as the soul, at the soul level, as the higher self. And that's how I want to live my life. That is what fulfills me. That is what I feel that my purpose is to embody that vibration, that soul essence. And it has taken choosing that over and over. And then when I feel like I'm in darkness again, or I'm confused, or I have lost my way, coming back to that choice point, coming back to the choice and making the choice again.
And that's really interesting, that whole angle of, thank you so much for sharing that so fully. It's beautiful. So that's so fascinating, that notion of employing tenacity for one's search for totality, as you put it, for the investment in one's spiritual expansion, and the use of tenacity for that. Because as you rightly say, a lot of people think about it in terms of, well, surely it's more about, the feminine principle, being receptive, being open, getting over ego, all that stuff, which of course is valid.
Mm-hmm.
But I see what you mean about the tenacity, because you're using tenacity by this, what it sounds like you're using tenacity to keep re-choosing, as you say, but also to keep re-choosing in the face of apparent information, external information, which might be telling you this is not worth pursuing. So you're saying, well, you can tell me that if you like. I can see this evidence for this situation, and I personally want to continue on my path. And I do think that it's a masculine principle element, isn't it? Tenacity. I think there's definitely a place for it, isn't there? In every aspect of our own growth. If we just try to be purely receptive, we're just going to flop about. We might seem very spiritual and waft about in sort of purple gowns and seem very. Did you ever see that video that JP Sears did called "How to Seem Really, Really Spiritual"?
I have seen a lot of his videos, so I'm sure I've come across that one. He's hilarious.
It was a very early one. He has a red little flower in his headband, and it's just hilarious.
And he had different characters, right? That he was, brilliant.
Exactly. So there's that whole kind of mystique of how you're supposed to be if you're spiritual.
Yes.
And as you were talking, I also thought we can only follow up when we're following our path. It's us following our path, not someone else.
Yes.
So, you've followed it your way. You couldn't have followed it any other way.
Yes. I love that. I love you bringing in the masculine and feminine, because it's such a great lens to look through, because I feel that we are a very masculine oriented society in Western cultures. And there is this, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, we idealize the drive and the pursuit, and that's, I come from a corporate background. When I worked in IT for a long time and moved to sales and IT sales, worked for blue chip companies, and very much adopted that masculine approach. And it was like this costume that I put on, where it was like, okay, this is how you survive and thrive in this environment. It is like you dedicate yourself to work, you you give your energy, your time, your talent in exchange for the money and the security. You make that your priority in life, even if it's not something that you're truly interested in. And it has a very high, like I said, priority in terms of, you might put things that you're actually interested in, care about, and love below. You would do those second or pay attention to those second versus, that priority, which is something you really don't care about, except for the fact that you have to survive. You need the income to survive. But there is this feminine part of us that is just the being and the receiving, like you say. And I think I allowed myself to get conditioned through school, through my culture, my society, into a more masculine expression. And even, like I say, like when I started meditating, when I started learning how to meditate, that was still the approach that I was taking. It was like I wanted to know the method. I needed steps. I needed to know like what was happening physiologically at the different stages. Like I really enjoyed that part of it, but I didn't want that. Wasn't looking for that surrender. I wasn't sure about that surrender. Those softer, more subjective aspects of it, I didn't value. It took a long time on my path to value the reception and the surrender. um, and there's not a right or wrong. It's not that the the feminine is right in the spiritual sense or that it's wrong in the mainstream sense, but we have these aspects that we're ideally balancing as we move along in our journey. And I like to think of the feminine as being like the background, like the space that is held for the totality of everything that we are. That the masculine is the action, and it is the like how we start to define and refine and play and do on that background. And for some of them, for some people, I imagine that they really like their purpose is more receptive. Like that is a valid expression for them. Tuning into um my own purpose, and when I say that, it's really just stepping back and what is it that brings me joy, what lights me up, what makes me feel energized, and then deriving my purpose from that. So, so not like I have had a being that's come forth and said, your purpose, Kara, is this, or, a medium telling me this. I've had reflections of it confirmed. I've had confirmations of it, but just really, I'm for people who are like, well, how do I find my purpose? It's like really what truly, truly lights you up. And so for me, there is more of a doing aspect to that where I'm communicating and I'm creating and I'm teaching and I'm writing, and those things I like the way that that makes me feel, and I like how it connects me with people. And so there's that joyful spark that comes through that helps me to have like an indicator of like, oh, okay, well, I like how this feels, and it's helped me to connect with these people who I do feel deeply connected with. And so I'm going to follow that path, but it does take action. I can't complete that feeling or that action without taking action, right? So without invoking some of that masculinity.
Exactly. I mean, hosting a podcast doesn't just happen, does it?
Exactly.
You don't
Yeah.
just sit meditating in your living room and suddenly you're doing a podcast.
Right.
And in your case, and also my case, it included the decision to join Podmatch. Quick shout out to Podmatch, where we met.
Right.
We may not have met had that not been the case, but because we were both there, we met and we both felt, oh, there's a match for a really beautiful conversation, which otherwise could never have happened.
Right.
So I do feel sometimes that the word pragmatic keeps coming to me. You've got a sort of healthy pragmatism in the way you talk about this, which I think is really needed. I think we need that, particularly in the spiritual community and the exploratory personal growth community, because without it, not much is going to actually happen.
Right.
We might feel very spiritual, but we may not actually be manifesting what
Right.
manifest.
Yes.
You put structures in place that enable you to then be receptive and receive what's given you. Like that beautiful thing you said about experiencing the light coming in when you were meditating. That wouldn't have happened if you were not in a receptive space at the time, but you might not have been in the receptive space if you had not pragmatically decided that now's your meditation time.
Exactly.
You probably turned the phone off, would be my guess.
Yes.
So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And it is, yeah, it goes hand in hand. And I love what you said too about you were kind of projecting into the future, like how do we then craft and create so that things happen and we create the life that we want. And when we think of that collectively, that's something that's really been on my mind for 2 or 3, 4 weeks, is that future state. And how do we get from here to there? Because it does take action, but we also could get into a feeling of like hopelessness if we don't feel that we have the skills. So we may be noticing the things that feel like, oh, society could be so much better if we had X, or the environment could be so much better if we cleaned up the oceans, or there wasn't so much litter, or we, didn't use so much plastic, or whatever it might be. We may have social things that catch our attention of like, wow, we really need to stop doing this, or we need to clean this up. Why are we still doing this? Why is there war? Why is there human trafficking? Why is there, and all of these really big things, but they can be so big that we can feel like, but I'm not in a position of power. So, and sure, there are like little steps that we can take as an individual. We can pick up litter when we see it, when we're just walking about. We can, you know, do petitions. Do petitions work? I don't know. Maybe that helps us to feel like we're doing something if we sign a petition or we start a petition. Um, but the power that we have through our consciousness and marrying the two, the surrender, the inaction with action. And as conscious beings, we have so much creative potential, and people can get stuck on that word creative because we can automatically think of dancing or painting or some kind of expression in the arts, but literally the power to create our reality, because we are creating our reality. We have been creating our reality all the while by what we pay attention to and what we do and what we talk about. And just we are crafting our world, but a lot of times we're doing it in an unconscious way. But I created a New Earth meditation recently, and this is just a free resource on my website. But it uses like a 10-minute meditation, 12-minute meditation to get us visualizing a higher world, a healthier world, a world that is in balance, and the water is clean and the air is clean and we have sovereignty. We are liberated beings, and the sentient life is protected and thriving, and all of these things that if we had a utopian society, if we had a utopian world, would be part of it. And we can get so fixated on, like, I'll just put out there, like the stuff that's being sprayed in the air, whether people are tuned into that or not, it is happening. And that we can like latch onto that and feel so angry and so powerless, because what are we going to do about that? It's like, I don't have the power to stop that with the position that I'm in. But my consciousness, if I am focusing on a reality where the skies are clear and the air is healthy, and that magnetizes by the power that we have to visualize a different reality and tune into it, it magnetizes that future and it pulls it in to our reality. And so if the more of us who are doing this and not focusing on what we don't like, so not focusing on the spraying of chemicals, for example, but focusing on what we want. So it's not like those planes need to get out of the sky. I don't want to see those grid lines in the sky anymore, and all of that. Well, what is it that you're focusing on there? But if we're picturing bright blue skies and the air is clean and clear, and we're bringing that in, and then we have, like, I've been so happy with so many people signing up for this meditation. I keep trying to encourage people, like, be sure you're using it. Because then not only are we individually pulling that into our reality, but we have more points of light on this planet who are shifting reality. And when we do that together, and we don't necessarily have to be together in time and space, we don't have to. I've got people all over the globe who have downloaded this and are using it. And we're just points of light beyond time and space, but who are crafting and creating this new reality. And as that happens, we allow the universe to work out the details. So even if we don't feel like this is something that we have the physical power, the physical collateral, to be able to move the needle on, the universe knows who those players are who can make the change. And it's up to the universe to work out the details to make that happen. But it's been fascinating as I have engaged with this, the things that I'll catch, these little glimmers of change. Like I'll go on Instagram and see a reel that's about like these really simple methods that people are finding to clean up microplastics. It's some super simple formulation that just dissolves microplastics. I mean, it's so simple. It's like, it's not this, I don't think, but it's something like baking soda and vinegar. I mean, it's like, what? And then another reel right after that is these two just like guys who are like, what do you do when you have two crazy guys who are passionate about cleaning up the ocean, and they've got this like device that looks almost like a time machine, and they are creating this solution just through their passion to focus on cleaning up the ocean because they have the talent, the gifts to really move the needle there. But through our own consciousness, our own creative force, we're helping to craft reality where there is a demand for that type of talent, and that they can pursue that and do great work. So even if it's not in our skill set, we're still helping to move the needle in a healthy and more evolved direction for the planet and for its people and its all sentient life.
Beautiful. Well, that's, to me, that sounds like you've got this pragmatic approach integrated with a kind of multi-layered awareness of how things happen, which is great, because often when we think of a practical approach, we kind of assume that therefore there's a linear thinking going on. But you're not linear thinking at all. You're kind of thinking on all different levels. And, you're talking about all those various different contexts. And I also love how in that you challenge the assumption of helplessness or powerlessness. And I think that is really, really, really important. Because I think you're absolutely right. It is possible to get really discouraged when we look at certain information and then possibly to get bitter and then miserable and then, you're done.
Hopeless. Yeah.
So
Right.
fantastic. That's very inspiring, the way that you talk about that.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
tell me more about your podcast and how that came to be.
Yes. So the podcast is a soul elevation podcast, and I actually just rebranded it at the start of this year in 2025, but it's been going since 2018. And I started it with a partner in Sweden, and we both met through meditation, learning it online with the monks that I was talking about. And we had been having such rich discussions through WhatsApp, voice messaging each other. And she had suggested maybe we should, take this to another level and start a podcast. So she and I did that together for, I think, about a year and a half, about 50 episodes or so. And she was incredibly busy, a young single mom, a single mom of a young daughter. She was a lawyer. She was like trying to start a spiritual community in Sweden. And so it she had to reorganize her life, reshuffle things, and couldn't do the podcast anymore. So I had to decide if I was going to carry on with it. So I did decide to take it on and focus it more on an interview style. And so now, but I kept it with that meditation conversation just because I really like that name. And I figure, well, people have been listening and that's the name of it. But very quickly, it wasn't really about meditation anymore. It was about expanding consciousness, connecting to the soul, a lot of like energy healing, or how the quantum physics, or ETs, a lot of the things that you talked about in the introduction, where they're spiritual in nature, and it's an alternative view of reality that's more accurate. It's not linear. And so there are all different kinds of people doing fascinating work and utilizing the quantum powers and the energy that we are in, and engaging with life in a different way. So I think today I released episode like 440, something like that. So it's been going for a long time. And
Congratulations.
thank you. Thank you. And it's been a beautiful way to meet people, and just to engage with this different way of thinking that's beyond, the mainstream, what we're told is possible, or what's important, what we're told is important, and things like that. So it's been so fulfilling.
Beautiful. Well, you have an amazing array of guests on there, and a
Thank you.
beautiful array of topics. But you're quite right. It is within that context of soul elevation. So it's not one of those podcasts where you come on, the episode could be about absolutely anything, and you've got no
Right.
idea if it's going to be of value. So if someone's looking for something that's about soul elevation, they will find it on your show. So I really recommend to everybody, do tune in to that beautiful podcast, because it really is really excellent. And it
Thank you so
shows that you've been
much.
doing it for years as well. I don't mean that it's stale. I mean that it's grounded. It's evolved. It's blossomed. So it's a
Thank you.
fantastic piece of work. Because
Thank
I
you so
don't think
much.
I don't think most people realize that you know when people have a podcast, particularly for years like that, you're investing your time, money, and energy into that every single week, aren't you?
Right. Yeah.
There's not necessarily loads of money coming in. It's a gift. So I just really want to appreciate that you're
Thank you.
doing that. I mean, mine is a very young podcast by comparison, but still enough for me to sort of understand a bit about what it takes to really.
Right. Yes, thank you. Yeah, and likewise, I'm a reflection of you and where you've been to, and yeah, it's a labor of love. I get so much from it, and I love the conversations that I'm having. We go to different podcast summits, and different ways people podcasting try to help you to see like how to grow your audience and so forth. And so often it is this like connecting with the listener. What does the listener want? What does the listener want? And I do see value in that. And I don't want to be, excluding the listener, but I use kind of my own intuition to determine, like, what do I want to explore in this? If it's because it is this labor of love. So it's like, well, I want it to feed my soul too. And so, there are times where I get guests that come across and it's, oh, they've got, 20,000 subscribers or 50,000 subscribers, but they're talking about something like I don't get that sense of like, oh, this is somebody I want to spend time with, or I want to, suggest to other people that they engage in their world, and the clickbaity thing too that's been something that's coming more to the forefront, where it's this balance of seeing other, very successful podcasts in this space. One in particular that uses very clickbait approaches and aren't accurate with what they put out there, what they're saying is in the episode, why you can't miss this one, because we're going to tell you this secret thing that happens in 2025. And it's like, what? And then you listen and there's nothing about 2025 in it, or whatever it might be. I mean, that's happened over and over, where it's like, this is really good content. Like, why are you not being accurate with what is in here? But anyway, seeing things like that, and even within my own content of like there are a couple of episodes in particular that strike more of a fear chord because of what where the guest took the conversation, that I don't necessarily subscribe to. There are parts of the episode that I really, really love. And then there are more fear-based things that I don't really agree with. And then seeing how much traction those episodes have and longevity. And that's like it's an interesting ego exercise, because it's like really this exercise of staying true and aligned to what I think is important, even when it might not be, millions of downloads. And, I can see very clearly what the formula could be to make things skyrocket, but at what cost, and that alignment, like what priority do we put on our alignment, our spiritual alignment, being in our alignment with truth, and the truth as we really understand it, rather than trying to entice people by igniting a fear response or, I don't know. It's an interesting egoic exercise.
Yes. And is that another part of your tenacity, the tenacity to keep it real, keep it authentic?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, because it is a choice that you have to keep making. Um, when I know that you understand when you're coming up with episode titles, you want to be creative and really bring out the best in it. You could turn every title into something that the listener needs to fear. And that may really make them not be almost take out their choice, because they really feel like they have to listen and take out their agency. Um, and you could tell yourself, well, I want them, they're better off listening to this content because it will uplift them. But I need to engage with them at a lower level to get them, to trick them into doing it, and so we could tell ourselves these stories. And I think that is something that we need to be real about and be conscious of. And I think that can be a trap, in my opinion.
I agree. And I think that can apply to any kind of work with spirituality or growth, can't it? If you're constantly emphasizing, I'm going to help you escape a disaster, and that disaster is you.
Yeah,
Kind of awful. I actually had a conversation with someone who does some marketing work for me, because she was coming up with all these ideas, and I said, look, I love all of these except this bit, which is about the idea that they're going to want what I'm offering because there's something wrong with them. I said, no, I'm not doing that bit. Is that okay with you? And she went, I love it. She was only doing it because you've been taught to in marketing school.
Oh,
You didn't
yes.
So
Yeah.
there is that whole thing, isn't there, in our culture, like, let's be dramatic about it. Let's focus on and it links back to what you were talking about before with, you can get depressed or feel helpless and powerless in the face, so there's, like you were saying, there's always that choice of how you face into what's going on. But
Right.
this is such a great conversation. I could talk to you for hours and hours.
Likewise.
I'm going to actually slightly shift gear, and just say to you, so you've really explored this whole spiritual path that you're on, and I love the way you've explored it, and it's very individual to you, and I think there's a lot that we can all learn, A, from the way you've explored it, but B, from the simple fact that you've explored it your way, and that reminder that we all need to explore that our own way. Because as someone else said, you can't be someone else, they're all taken. So you've got to do our own way. So there are a lot of people out there who are trying to be part of the solution in this very interesting world that we're in. And some of them are in, officially leadership positions. Some of them are not. Some of them are parents that, community leaders or trying to be leaders in their own lives. But they're all trying to embody and stand for something and be part of the solution. And some of those people are listening to us right now. Is there something you'd like to say to those sorts of people in relationship to tenacity and the spiritual path?
What a thoughtful question. I love this. And what comes to mind is a big jigsaw puzzle. I love thinking about the creation, God's creation, the infinite, however you want to think about it, this infinite intelligence that is running within, through, behind everything. And that we are pieces to this bigger puzzle. And we can't all be the same piece, right? Which is exactly what you were just saying. We all, in order to complete it, we have been given the gifts, the passions, the interest, the spark that is going to provide this bigger completion. And so it is that honoring. I know that, I mentioned already the cult experience that I had. An earlier experience than that, it was, I think, less culty. There are people that could also say that was a cult type of thing, but it was kind of alternative religion sort of territory. But it had a guru, and and the whole idea, and this guru had died, decades before. So they were carrying the torch of the teachings that this guru had given. And it was very much like, just do what he says in these teachings. To the extent that I went to an elder at one point and I was like, have you ever done the oh gosh, what's it called? The Enneagram. I had asked him if he'd done the Enneagram, which is it's almost like a personality test, it's right. And so and I said, I just wondered if that had ever come up, if you'd gotten value from it, because somebody was telling me about it. I was kind of interested. And he said, um, Master didn't teach the Enneagram. It was not part of his teachings, and he's given us complete teachings. So why would I spend time with something that he didn't teach? Well, the Enneagram wasn't around back then, for one thing, but also it's this very narrow view of what we're supposed to get out of life, where we're supposed to put our focus. It takes out a whole, there has been this explosion of tools and that weren't here 100 years ago. And society is in a different place. The collective, we're at a different vibration. The planet is at a different vibration, and it's changing very quickly. So that kind of narrow view of here's the box that we all go in. Don't look outside the box. Just stay in the box. And that was one of the things that chipped away and pulled me back to I don't think this is for me, because there is just there is just so much out there, and it's so interesting, and it's all a way for me to get back to understanding myself and understanding my role here. So um I would just kind of go back to what we talked about with the using that spark, that inspiration that we feel, the joy that we feel as we're moving through life to help to guide us. Like, does it feel, if I'm cleaning up a river, if I'm working with the community or guiding the community of let's focus on this river and clean it up, and I feel such fulfillment, I feel such connection with the people, I feel such connection with the land, it really it lights me up, then that is a great indication of where your skills and your talents can be useful and where you can serve. And it's a win-win because you're helping others, you're helping your community, but you're lighting yourself up. And that's such an important gauge to forge our own path.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Now, one question I haven't asked you, which I haven't left very much time to ask you, so it may not do justice, but would you just let us know, in addition to doing your podcast, what else are you doing to help people at the moment?
Yes, thank you. So I have my book, which is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all the places. So that's Your Authentic Awakening, a guide to everyday spiritual living. I have a Learn to Meditate program online that's self-paced, and it is very kind of bite-sized videos. The idea is to engage with it every day for 21 days, and it's just bite-sized consumable content with a lot of support of guided meditations and so forth. So that's on my website, karagoodwin.com. And I have a community that I meet with once or twice a week for online meditations. And we get together. I'm still trying to find the right title for. We have this like informal community gathering where we get together and just to sort of like chat and update and inspire. And lift each other up, and then we kind of do an invocation at the end of just to bless all of us and what we're wanting to manifest or however we want to think of it. Um, so it's called the Healing Hearth, and we always have a book club and everything's different aspects to that. And there are a lot of free resources on my website, a lot of like different guided meditations. I have the option of a personalized meditation / energy transmission, where if you've got something that you specifically want to work on, I create a guided meditation to help you to tune into that future reality, pull it in.
Fantastic. Well, that's really a very rich and wonderful panoply of things you're offering there. That's something someone could give themselves as a gift to carry them through the summer, and through into the autumn, and just get a real enriching, beautiful experience. And your energy is so light while still being substantial, around it. So it's a very appealing, inspiring kind of space that you're offering. And I think it's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you so much. It's so kind.
It's not at all. So we talked about a lot today, Kara. Has there been for you a favorite part of our conversation today?
Oh, you've just taken us so many really deep and important places. I think I love how we finished it with this honoring of who we are as individuals and how we navigate, bringing more of the fullness of who we are into this precious life that we have, this precious incarnation, this gift that we're given to be here on earth in this physical body. From a spiritual perspective, this is such an opportunity. So I really encourage people to explore that idea that you're here, you've been given the gift of having this experience. So how can you, from the soul level, use this physical incarnation to experience it at the soul level to the fullest extent possible?
Wow. Thank you so much. That's so beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for hosting me, Catherine. I really appreciate it.
It's my complete pleasure. So thank you very much to the listeners and viewers as well. That's all for Truth and Transcendence today. You can find our other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. Please be sure to give us a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, and share with your friends. And if you're watching a video of this, comment on what we were discussing today below. And do go and check out karagoodwin.com and check out the Soul Elevation podcast and also check out Kara's beautiful book. So thank you again, Kara Goodwin, so much.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. It really helps if you give a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, a review, and share with your friends. If you're looking for transformational coaching or an intensive transformational weekend workshop experience, I can help with that. You can actually help the show by making a donation. Until next time, take care.